joining. This is the event that we are pretty excited to have, and I think we already have over 40 people joining the call, which is perfect. Uh, this is going to be the first session of our series of Credential Soup. We're going to have another one coming up next week, so stay tuned for the poster and the panelists on that. This one is focusing on sustainability certification, and the next one is going to be focused on energy certification. So this event is part of Illinois Green Alliance event. Illinois Green Alliance is a membership-driven nonprofit organization that advances green buildings and sustainable communities for all. To accomplish the mission, the Illinois Green strives to promote green building in a couple of areas like educational events such as panels and building tours, engaging communities and partnering with organizations across Illinois, and by advocating for new policies and legislation. So this is the event for the next week. It's going to happen at the same exact time. It's going to be between 6 to 8, and we are going to focus on BEMP and CEM certification. And as I said, that one is going to be focused on energy and commissioning certification, and this one is going to be on sustainability. So this event was organized by our auxiliary board. Our auxiliary board is a diverse group of professionals passionate about sustainability, and we are technically a bridge between young professionals, recent graduates, students, and the board of directors and Illinois Green. And we help Illinois Green on organizing events like this and other socializing and networking events. These are the name of our auxiliary, the current auxiliary board that we have. So we have kind of mid to big size board member to make sure that we are engaging everyone who is interested. So if you are interested, I expect to see a lot of young professionals, recent grad or students. So if you are interested, please feel free to reach out. We are recruiting for our new board, for our 2021 board. So if you are interested, please email us and just fill the application. We are accepting new members for 2021. So meet our panelists. We have John Mlade with Wight companies. We have Kelly Adighije with Baumann, and we have Kelly Moynihan with Farr Associate, and Paddy Lloyd with Leopardo companies. So for the first question, I'm going to ask Kelly Adighije to just introduce himself and explain a little bit about Lead AP and Lead GA for us.
Thank you, Mohammed. My name is Kelly Adighije. I'm a mechanical engineer consultant for Baumann Consultant, like he mentioned. Been in industry 16 years. And I basically got my lead AP, I think in 2009, as we were going through the transition from lead version 2.2 to version 3. So quick history is, initially it was a choice between BREEAM or MNEGI or other sustainability certifications out there. I'm from the UK, so BREEAM is very common in the UK, and LEED was not really something that anyone really paid a lot of attention to. But I wanted to set myself apart from others. It was a pretty competitive industry, you know, there's lots of smart people. It's almost intimidating when you go to a big firm and you have to kind of find your feet, you have to specialize in something. So you have to learn also that certifying doesn't stop because you graduated. You know, you graduated, how do you learn, how do you evolve, how do you improve? So you need to like test myself, you know, not get lazy, stay out of my comfort zone, because our industry is ever changing, and if you stay in one particular location, you kind of like don't really move. So my interest in LEED was basically because you get to pay attention to like a lot of other industries that you're not usually dealing with, because I'm a mechanical engineer. I usually don't have anything to do with the landscape architect or the lighting designer or any of the other specialisms that come into a foray when it comes to high performance buildings or buildings of this kind of type. So what kind of interested me with LEED was, it was obviously going in the sustainability direction. I have to admit, I was never really focused on that when I graduated. It was just what else can I do? But the more I paid attention to it, the more I talked about a holistic view of the built environment, not just with the building, but actually how the building affects everything around it. That was where the interest basically came in. So based on the slide points there, you can see basically how much the exam cost. It's kind of a big industry now. It's been evolving. It was, I think, LEED version 2, and then LEED version 2.2, LEED version 3, LEED version 4. There's now 4.1 variations as well. Many different languages. It's global. It's so international. It's been able to actually allow me to work on projects internationally, which has been very beneficial to my career. Definitely made the right choice at the time. And I'm more than happy to talk to you guys about it as much as you want to. And I can tell you some of my experiences. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Kelly. It was great. So we're going to move on to John Mlade, who is a WELL AP, WELL faculty, and part of WELL advisory program as well. So he's all WELL. So John, could you introduce yourself and talk, just explain WELL AP and other similar programs for us?
Sure. So, if you think about LEED being for environmental performance, where we need to reduce our lighting power density and conserve water and conserve energy, those things are very important, but there's a piece missing, and that's really the occupant health. And particularly these days with COVID, occupant health and wellness are at the forefront for many client considerations. And so rather than looking at lighting power density, WELL asks the question of, does the lighting support the circadian rhythm of the occupants? Rather than asking if we are reducing the amount of water used, WELL asks, is that water of sufficient quality to drink? And is it accessible to all the building occupants to keep them hydrated? And so it's thinking about things, the building, in terms of how it impacts the human body. And so, WELL was developed with quite a bit of, like LEED and these other programs, they're well thought out, but was developed more with a tilt towards medical professionals, the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, and trying to make that bridge between the science, the medical science, and design practice. And so, a lot of it is based on what we've observed in the built environment, how people respond to the built environment, and really trying to make the case that we can do a lot with buildings, since we spend so much time in them, to help people feel better, to help people be more productive, and ultimately to keep them well. WELL is not very old. I think the research started probably close to 15 years ago. A previous firm I worked with was involved in some of the early reviews of WELL, and it's evolved a lot. These early reviews, there was criteria like requiring juicers on people's countertops. Well, that certainly isn't going to fly in developer-driven developments. And so, it's one of the things that I really appreciate about WELL is that because it is not rooted in a not-for-profit, it was privately financed, they're well-funded and quite nimble within the marketplace. Whereas some rating systems require a lot of buy-in from stakeholders and committees, which sometimes kind of finds the lowest common denominator of things. WELL has been unleashed from that and has really been able to push the envelope, adapt quickly, and they have the resources to make some really slick both presentations, website, and resources to support it. I'll look forward to sharing a little bit more with you as we present with the breakout. Thanks.
Perfect. That was awesome. Thank you, John. So we're going to move to Passive House CPHC, Certified Passive House Consultants. And we have Kelly Moynihan here. Hi, Kelly. Could you introduce yourself and explain CPHC for us?
Sure. Thanks, Mohammed. I'm Kelly Moynihan, Associate Principal at Farr Associates. I'm a practicing architect, and we specialize in high-performance buildings, and sometimes that includes passive house buildings. So the CPHC credential is probably a little less known than, say, a LEED credential or others. It's a little bit newer as well to the US market. Passive House is a standard that originated in Germany and traveled to the US with some tweaks to specifying it closer to what our climate is here in the US, because we have a much more diverse climate spectrum than Germany does and most of Europe. So I became a CPHC 2 years ago. I actually completed the course with you, Mohammed. And I mainly picked up the credential because it was a driver in my firm, because we work a lot on high performance buildings and are often pushing Passive House as a certification for our clients. It seemed natural that it would be something that I needed to learn more about. So without diving too much into what Passive House certification is, because that could be a very, very long lecture, the fundamentals are this. The Passive House Institute US, FIAS, will sell themselves as the best path to net zero and or net positive buildings. And the way that they do that are in very kind of, in the simplified terms, are you take a building, you simplify its form, and you super insulate it so that it's holding and controlling its temperature. You make it extremely airtight, way beyond what code standards would require. And that allows you to minimize your mechanical systems inside the building. And so therefore you are very well set up to potentially hit net zero with some sort of renewable offset. So that's a really, really simplified overview of what FIAS is. The credential is really for building science geeks. I think they like to draw those types of people. I was not one prior to getting this, but have learned so much more than I ever could have imagined about everything that goes into building science in regards to envelope of buildings, detailing of buildings, because that's really the stuff that FIAS cares about most. The credential is a pretty intensive certification process to get, with a lot of study up front, and then a kind of a week-long intensive course. So it's a pretty big commitment to get it, but when you have it, it's definitely made me way more well-versed in talking about building science, both with engineers on my teams and clients. So when we're trying to talk about how to push the envelope a little bit further in being more high performing, more energy efficient, I now have the tools to do that. Another big part of it is learning to use the WFI software, which is a German energy modeling program, which is used for Passive House certification. And this is a building modeling energy tool that allows you to test different assemblies, test different mechanical systems so that you can be hitting these targets that are required for the certification. So I would say, compared to like a LEED certification or a LFA living building certification, which you will hear about next, FIAS is much more focused on kind of building science essentials, whereas LEED, WELL, and LFA are definitely more holistic certifications that look at many, many other aspects.
That was great. Thank you, Kelly. Let's move to Living Future Accreditation and Patty Lloyd. Patty, could you introduce yourself and talk about LFA a little bit, and how did you get it?
Yeah, hi, I'm Patty Lloyd from Leopardo Companies. I'm the facilitator of the Chicago Living Future Collaborative and an ambassador, a Living Future ambassador. So the Chicago Living Future Collaborative is a local group, it's a local representative group of the International Living Future Institute. And the International Living Future Institute is an NGO based out of Seattle, and they've created a number of programs, including the Living Building Challenge, Living Product Challenge, Living Community Challenge. They've got the labels Declare, Just, and Reveal, and then there are some certifications. There's Zero certification, Zero Energy certification, core certification and zero carbon certification. So the Living Future accreditation is a great credential to have, and the coursework and the things that you learn on your way to becoming accredited is really inspiring. So straight from their website, distinguish yourself as a leader in the regenerative design community by becoming a Living Future accredited. Demonstrate your commitment, deepen your knowledge, display your expertise. So Living Future accreditation is a requirement to become an ambassador. It's also, I think, required on a LBC project. It requires a few steps. And also, I just want to say, it's a really small group. I want to say there's less than 10 LFAs in the Chicago area. So it's a great area to distinguish yourself with a unique credential. So the first step is to register and become a member of ILFI. After you've registered and you register to become an LFA, then you go through this self-guided online education program. So you have to have 36 continuing education credits to become an LFA. And for first-time accreditation, you have to start with the foundational curriculum, which is a core set of 20 hours of pre-selected courses that you have to take. And they're all available through the online learning platform. Then you have the 16 general credits, which can be selected from the online library. You can get them from ILFI conferences, reading, ILFI recommended books, or through other non-ILFI education. For instance, there's a few programs from Illinois Green that the collaborative has put on that I've claimed for CEU hours. So looking at the pricing breakout, it's important to note you do pay a significant amount of money for first-time accreditation. However, when you renew your credential every 2 years, you only have to do the 16 hours. So you only do the big chunk of 20 hours one time. There's some really great things about the LFA process. First of all, there's no exam. So that was really great to get a credential without taking a test. There were some little quizzes in some of the units, and I actually bombed a couple of them, but you get the opportunity to take them over and over again. And then the on-demand platform was really flexible and manageable. I literally took several classes while sitting outside my kids' school waiting for them to come out from their sports. So it was really handy. I have a lot more to say about the LFA, but I'm going to save that for the breakout room.
No, that was great, Patty. Actually, just, I added one question based on your summary of LFA, which was, I think LFA and Passive House, and hopefully we're going to get to that question at the end at least, talking about how these certifications, some of them are opening up some opportunities for us to be part of a community and just shape a community of the people that have common interests, like LFA and Passive House. I think those two are a good example. So we're going to get back to that. Before we start the questions, other questions to our panelists, I would love to just do a poll for the audience to see where are the interests and just like why people want to pursue a different certification and which certification they want to pursue. So if we can we have those polls now? Great. So we have two questions here, and literally with asking these questions, we want to just hear from you first to see what is the main reason that you're attending and which certification you're planning to pursue, and you can pick more than one choice. So we're gonna give 30 more seconds for everyone to participate in the polls. Great.
Kind of feel like I'm watching the coffee cup and donut race at the.
Okay, so I'm gonna end the polling now and share the result. So, I mean, we have a winner here, which is the LAP, which to me, it makes sense because of the situation that we are in and also like the interest, but like Lead GA, the combination of Lead GA and Lead AP also pretty high. And yeah, I'm also really glad that LFA is getting a huge attention as well. Okay, so can we go to the second question? Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see the second question. Okay, cool. So we have a good result on the second question too. So we can start our questions. So just a couple of quick notes before we open up the questions to our panelists. One is we know a lot of you have questions about what is the good study material, or like a specific question about like LEED, well, LFA, and passive house. We're gonna take those questions to the breakout room, so you can you're gonna get a chance of talking to the panelists more in details, and just like, or other people that went through the process of getting the certification. So we try to just postpone those questions that are more in detail about a certification to those breakout rooms. But actually after the whole event, you can follow up. We're gonna follow up with more study materials or resources that we can share with you, and you always have a chance of reaching out to us, asking for questions, and we're gonna do our best to help you. So I'm gonna start our question, and the first question is for Kelly, Moynihan, and Patty. So, and the first question, I mean, we can start with Kelly, Moynihan. Why did you pursue the certification? Why did you pursue passive house certification? Was that more related to the projects that you were working on? I know you mentioned a couple. You mentioned the fact that you're working for a high performance, for an architecture firm that has a huge interest on high performance design. What was the relation of pursuing this certification and the projects that you are working on? And also, what was the relation with your career goals? I mean, did Passive House help you in your career development, or just like getting new projects or getting promotion at work?
So I'll say that the reason I pursued it was because of the projects we were already working at our firm. So because Passive House isn't as, we'll call it popular as maybe LEED projects are, I just happened to work in a place where that was something we were going to start pushing, just because we felt it kind of like a living building challenge. And actually, I would argue FIAS and living building challenge go together really, really nicely.
Yeah.
We were kind of, as a firm, deciding that our goals for our clients was to help push them in that direction. And so it was only natural that we were going to start having all the architects in our office take on this credential. So I won't say that, I won't, lie and say it was some sort of personal goal of mine, but I will say it has made me much more dangerous, if you will, to talk about these things with clients, and not even just when you're going after the actual certification on a project, but in ways that you can speak a better language about what we're really trying to do. What is the actual science behind this? Why does it matter? What are the techniques to get there? It also has made me, I think, speak better engineering speak, in that it's definitely more kind of I think in their wheelhouse than like a typical architect. I'll say the training, or the studying for the credential was definitely a deep dive into kind of my MEP coursework that I had to take in grad school. And so it was actually a really great refresher in some of the things that maybe we as architects can take for granted, and that we should probably understand them better. So I won't say that it has necessarily helped me with a promotion or anything like that, but I think it has made me much more, it makes me think about buildings in a way that I hadn't before, in a more technical sense, which I think is very, very important if you care about high performance buildings and being able to execute them.
Perfect. I think that was great. I mean, especially I'm sure that for the architects and designers in the audience, that was a great response. Paddy, we have the same question for you. What was the main reason that you pursued LFA in the first place, and what was the impact of that on your career?
So I pursued my LFA for kind of a non-traditional reason. I'm like fiercely loyal to Illinois Green, and they needed to have a Living Future collaborative in Chicago, which was kind of defunct at that time. But to have someone run that collaborative and be the facilitator, that person had to be an LFA. So I became an LFA so that we could start back up the Chicago Living Future collaborative. But it's been really interesting for me. I also did it because I want to work on Living Building Challenge projects, and your chances of working on a project like that are considerably higher if you have the credential and you have some knowledge. And so I was trying to pave my own path. It hasn't worked yet, but I have no doubt that it will. Another really cool thing that happened as part of it is I became part of a community that I wasn't missing because I didn't know it was out there, but now I'm part of this international community of ambassadors, and it's been a really powerful experience for me. I've had an opportunity to meet people from all over the world. I just did the Emerge Leadership Conference with Living Future, and so it's been, though it hasn't helped me in my job, I would certainly say it has helped my career and deepened my knowledge.
No, that was great. I mean, it's, again, Living ILFI, I believe one of those that has a strong community and network. So yeah, I mean, that is being part of that. I think it's a huge take on that. So the next question for first Kelly, Adighije, and then John Mlade. With so many certification out there, like we used to have only LEED, and now we have over, at least I would say, 20 active certification, and every day I see new certification in people's signature that I Google it to make sure what is that and if I have to get it or not. But with so many certification out there, how do you, for younger people that we have in the audience and other people that are trying to pursue a certification, what is the way of like identifying that what is a good certification for them? Or how do you come up with a mindset or just a thought frame that we can choose a good certification? So Kelly,
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, did you say this one was for me?
But you're second. Kelly going first.
Don't worry, I'll be quick, John. I think that's a very good question, Mohammed. Trying to pick a certification, I don't think is the first thing that someone should do. And this might be a little bit controversial. I always feel like you kind of need almost a traditional like degree or whatever. And as you evolve into a particular industry, then you add that certification as like, okay, I'm moving in this direction. This is going to help me understand all the other facets holistically, especially if you're in the built environment. I was supposed to get into medical school. Somehow I ended up becoming a mechanical engineer. Then I graduated and I got my chartership as a PE. And then I was like, okay, now that I'm working as an engineer, what do I need to help me work in international or in very, very diverse project teams? Because you don't want to just come in, like Kelly said, with your engineering speech. You want to know what the architects care about. You want to know what the landscape engineers care about. You want to know how much water is being used. You want to know the impact of your building. I also loved energy modeling as a young graduate engineer, and I saw that was a massive facet within LEED. So that was another driver. It's like, okay, if I can design this building, but also do it in a software as a virtual, what does that bring to the table? Do I end up being two different heads on a project team rather than just one guy who designs the ductwork or the pipework and moves on to the next building? So my response to that question is the certification that you pick has to kind of resonate with you in terms of maybe what direction your career might be headed, or something that you think will help you in the trajectory that you're kind of pushing through. For me, it was LEED. It could have been a merit, but it was LEED because of the teams I was working on, the kind of projects we were working on. I guess the year was 2008, 2009. Then I learned Esteemed was in Dubai. I learned Minegi was in Switzerland. I learned Adighije was in Germany.
Right.
And it was all coming out all over the world. So Lead was basically what I decided to pick. John.
That was great. John, I'm gonna add a second part to the question. So this question, I wanna add a second part to the question that, I mean, these days we hear a lot from people asking, I'm hearing a lot about well, but should I get my lead first and then get my well AP? So yeah, in addition to the first part of the question, I think you are the best person to answer to that. For people that asking, should I get well or lead? I mean, I think you're expert on both. So how do you answer to that?
Sure. You know, I think first building on what Kelly said, I think a big question is to ask, how do you best position yourself within your firm and within the marketplace? And if there's, you know, LFA is fantastic. You learn a lot with all of these. And no matter the credential you pursue, you're going to deepen your understanding of sustainable design. And that ultimately is going to help everybody in all of your projects. But if you don't have clients pursuing well, does it make sense for you to pursue well?
Right.
You know, I think in some way it depends on what discipline you're in. In the case of well, I think it's more critical for a contractor, for example, to understand lead than well. And the reason is that within well, there's a lot of parameters that you know, have to do with operations and how the client is operating the building and policies they are dealing with with their employees. Whereas if you're a interior designer, perhaps well might make more sense because you're dealing in more in depth with, you know, wall reflectivity and glare control and things like that. And so, you know, it's really, I think you have to ask, and this goes both ways. You know, Patty suggested, you know, you pursue an LFA and you're more likely to get those projects. And that's absolutely true. It's a little bit of a chicken or the egg, or an egg. And on the other hand, you know, Kelly is pursued CPHC because her firm is doing a lot of those projects and it makes sense.
Right.
And so I think with well, you know, one of the things that I like about it professionally is that you tend to have deeper conversations about client values because a good part of well is rooted in policy and how they run their business. And it's an uncomfortable space that most of us in the built environment don't usually tread into. You know, it's a lot of HR and legalese and things like that. But you do have an opportunity there, and particularly as you're maturing through your career, to develop those client relationships, to connect with clients on a different level. Does that answer the question?
Yes, but I'm going to have a follow-up question for you. No, that was a great response. I mean, I was thinking about myself when you were just talking about the policies and like the different type of months and the relation with clients. I want to just ask the first part of the question again, that for young professional, I mean, the main intent of this event was to helping the recent grads or students that are pursuing the certification. Kelly had a good point on just the personality, what is your interest, and like find the certification. What is your main tip on which certification these young people should choose? What is the criteria that you suggest?
Yeah, you know, we can talk about how challenging each exam is or what you have to do to prepare. But I think underlying all of that is your desire to achieve it. And if you want to achieve it, if you're in the industry and you study up and you become familiar with these systems, really most people can achieve virtually all of these. You know, I think Kelly's right. CPHC is a little bit more technical, or a lot more technical than the others. But, you know, if you're committed to it and you're interested in it, none of these are out of bounds. You know, and so I think that is a very true point, to follow your own interests and what's guiding you. However, I temper that with follow what your firm needs, because ultimately that will lead to your success.
Right. No, both were great response. So we have, I mean, if I want to summarize the criteria, your interests, the client's needs, the firm's needs, and maybe I would add your own long-term career goals that could be outside of all of these.
That's right. And it is possible to study up on all of these, or any of them that you wish, without pursuing the certification.
Correct. Yeah.
And that level of understanding still improves your project work, regardless of your discipline.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That just like gaining the certification is probably not the goal all the time. So going to the next question, all of this certification come with a good level of knowledge, and a lot of them are helping us to gain more knowledge, to just develop our skills. So this question is for Patty, that how getting LFA helped you. I mean, when you were talking through the coursework, I mean, LFA is the only one that don't come with an exam. So how with going through those courses and just like those studies help you to just gain more knowledge and skills, and what was your experience with that? I think that's a LFA, since LFA is a kind of a unique certification in that way, that would be really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I've got two other credentials. I've got the LEED credential and I've got the WELL credential. And so what really differentiated the LFA from those? I found that the LFA curriculum was really inspiring, and it opened my eyes to some things. And I learned things that I hadn't learned in those previous other two credentials, although I will certainly say that there are some common themes that run throughout all of these credentials. But it really deepened my understanding about how you can better integrate things like social justice and equity into construction. I mean, I certainly had, just into buildings, I had been exposed to healthy materials. You know, LEED has a bit of healthy materials. WELL has some healthy materials, but LBC has the red list. And so I certainly got a deeper understanding through that. And then the entire unit on the ILFI Affordable Housing Program, I thought was really relevant and is timely, and it's going to become more timely as we go through this time in our country. So there were a lot of elements of the LFA that I found to be new information. And then one thing I want to say, which has nothing to do with the question you asked me, I just like to say what I want to say is, you know, getting a credential is awesome. But what are you really doing? You're engaging in learning. And if you want to be successful, you need to be a lifelong learner. You can't just be like, I got my credential, I'm done now, you know. So I just wanted to share that with the group, like everything you learn needs to build upon what you learned before and help you go forward to the next challenge.
No, that was that was great. Yeah, thank you. So I have the same question for Kelly Moynihan as well, but I know that Kelly, you already responded to this question, and I mean it was really interesting that I had this question for you from the beginning, but in your summary and in the previous question you already responded to that. So I want to add another component to it, that you brought up a really good point on how with getting passive house, you gain some engineering expertise and have a different point of view after having a CPHC. So for architects that want to learn about energy, or just they're really ambitious about sustainability and passive house, and maybe their firm is not that passionate about doing that, how do you recommend them to just still find a way to pursue their passion on passive house? I'm asking that because I know a couple of specific young people out of a school that are a good case of these.
So I'm taking your question to mean if you're an architect, what can this credential get for you or do for you other than just working on passive house projects?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say, and I'll speak as an architect specifically, I think getting a deeper understanding of thermodynamics and what the proper detail for walls are. I mean, you kind of learn these things, and you might have drawn several buildings in your prior experience, or you learn some things in school, but to really understand like why the air barrier should be where it is, like what does that mean? Where condensation is really going to form if you do the wrong thing. So I think it helps you think through problems that a lot of buildings have naturally as they've been built before, and even how code compliant buildings have their faults. So I think if for no other reason, it helps you to probably design better buildings altogether. Even if your client doesn't care at all about this, even if your firm doesn't care about this, I think you probably are going to be learning principles that will serve you well in your responsibilities as an architect to deliver a building that keeps the water out and performs well. So I think that's kind of the bare minimum of what you could get out of this. On top of that, I think to what I said earlier about being able to speak better engineering speak, I think understanding how the systems play better with like envelope decisions and like how those are integrated choices. Again, not everybody practices like an integrated design approach within their firms or in their project teams. But when you think like a passive house consultant, you're kind of doing that in your head as you're even starting schematics on a project. So I think all of those things will serve you well, regardless of going for the certification or not. So I would argue that it's a really great credential for architects specifically, because I think it just makes you design better buildings, regardless of how you want them to perform from an energy efficiency standpoint.
Okay, no, that was a great response, and I want to ask another quick follow-up question for you. That a lot of times when we are getting the certification, we look at projects in sort of like 1 or 0 scenario, that either they get a certification, so we do everything for that project, or we do nothing. So, and the same thing for LEED. Well, and I think the interesting thing is with having this certification in the market, a lot of strategies from them are becoming a standard practice for all the projects. So I'm sure that not all of the projects that you're working on are passive house certified. So do you have any special, like, do you have any case study or just any example of like how with doing passive house all the time, you had an opportunity of doing better on non-passive house project?
Well, I think now that, especially at my firm where it's kind of becoming a part of our common language on every project, even if we're not going for certification, we're often starting with passive house principles like from the get-go, kind of whether the client even knows it or not. Like that's where we're going to start, and which I think is a really good thing. And then using I mentioned in my intro, the energy modeling tool of WFI, which is the passive house required tool to use for your documentation. We often use it as a design tool. Like we're using it on our end for preliminary schematic design stuff to test out, well, what if we change the assembly to this? What if we added more insulation here? So we're kind of using it as like a raw kind of test model to just try some things out. And so I think it's been really helpful in just, again, getting a project going in the right direction, regardless of if you're going for any sort of certification. So that's kind of become regular practice for us in our firm. And I would say even like you're working in a place that doesn't care about passive house and you're pursuing this credential, maybe because you just really like building science things, you really care about details, you're a very technical architect, you might enjoy like playing with these things to help you make better informed decisions. So it's not even that it has to be a part of your firm culture, but if it's more like how your brain works, I think it can be good for a lot of architects out there.
That was perfect. So the next question is for Kelly Adighije on, and this is I think this is going to be a really important question for so many people, that when you're hiring people, and you're just, I'm sure you're reviewing like 100, at least 50 CVs when you're just like hiring a person. What is the impact of seeing those credential on people's resume when you're hiring them?
That's a very good question, Mohammed, because this actually does happen. Honestly, if I see a young engineer with triple-digit letters behind their names, like rolled out across the highway, I would actually have some reservations, because some people just like to collect credentials, and they just have it, but they're not actually experts at it. They just pass an exam. I basically look at maybe a young engineer's trajectory in terms of where they worked, check some of the projects that they worked on, and see if that ties in with some of the credentials that they've actually been able to obtain. And I basically think maybe a credential every couple of years is probably a good standard. So if you've been in industry 6 years or 8 years and you have 3 or 4, that's technically what I would expect. If you've been in industry a year or 2 years and you have 5 or 6, I'm going to be a little bit skeptical, because but I understand the game. You want to kind of accentuate yourself pull yourself out and be more competitive. But at the same time, I would like to see like that there was a pathway in terms of where I can see where you're heading. So if you get maybe a credential that is totally out of left field, and then you get something else that is in that direction, I'm like, okay, this is someone that has not really made up their mind what they're trying to do. But if I see, like, for instance, I like the way you have Patty and you have John, because Patty's got lead, and she's got well, and she's got LFA. John has got, lead, and now he's well. I've got lead. We're slightly in different industries, but Patty runs the sustainability arm of her company. Makes perfect sense. And she's done that over a lot of years. John, same way what he does at Wight & Co. He had to go from the lead to the well step. And they've been in the industry for quite a long period of time. So it makes sense. I can read their resume and I understand exactly what pathway they went through. So I hope that answers your question, though. The impact is very dependent on how many years they've been in service and if there's a correlation between each of those certifications that is leading to a particular direction.
That was a really great response. I mean,
oddly, if I may, Mohammed,
sure.
Oddly, I think lead is the exception. There's now over 200,000 lead APs. I don't know, hundreds of thousands of lead APs, and it's almost the greens fee for moving into any sort of sustainable design.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree, John. It's usually, I think lead is kind of like your first step, especially if you get the lead GA now. Okay, that means you have interest in sustainability industry. I get it. You get it for 2, and then maybe for 2 years, you figure out what direction or specialism you want to go into. If you're an energy modeler, BEMP makes sense after that. If you're in commissioning, you want to get a commissioning certification. But you're absolutely right. I see lead as kind of like that first jump.
Yeah. That was a really good response. So I would summarize it just like not too much. I mean, not any. So you have to have a reasonable number of certification and just related to expertise. But I would say, Kelly, I have to be careful. Next time I'm sending you an email, I'm going to edit my signature. I'm probably just going to delete 1 or 2, or just I have to add more years to my career.
Mohammed, I actually had to get rid of some of mine. Because I made that first step also, and it was alphabet soup.
No, that was a really good lesson learned for me too, to just know that there should be a reasonable number, and just you have to, with too many certification or not any, you're sending a wrong message to your clients or people who are hiring you, or just people that you're working with. Okay, great. So next question for John. Just assume that someone who is reporting to you, coming to you, and just like trying to convince you to just pay for a certification. And this is I think this is a common problem for a lot of young professionals that are interested, and just like they're trying to convince their supervisor. And I think this is a concern that I'm hearing from a lot of people. How do you suggest that they do approach their supervisor? It's kind of, I know it's a kind of art of negotiation, and you brought up a good point earlier, talking about the clients, the benefits to the firm, but how do you frame that? I mean, what's your recommendation for those people that are trying to convince their supervisor to pay for the certification?
Sure. I think it's a few-fold, and one is if there's a project, or particularly a project pursuit, maybe, that you can see where having this credential would help the success of the firm, winning the project and delivering the project, then I think it's easier to make a case. If there's lots of people around you with the same credential, it's going to be more challenging because other people can fill that role, right? So you want to look at both applicability in projects or upcoming projects. You want to look at, popularity is not the right word, but how common it is. If it's less common and needed, then there's probably a need for you to get it to make a difference and fill that particular role. But at the end of the day, there's also a pretty big difference in cost between some of these. Probably up to 5 or 6-fold. And so and Kelly, you would know better for Passive House, but my understanding is that, Lead and Well, you can probably pull off for a few $100. So if you were really committed and really wanted to, continue your learning trajectory, there's probably ways you can figure that out with student rates or with young professional rates and other things. The Passive House credential is fairly steep, probably upwards of $1,500.
More than that.
It's 2,000 plus 300 for the exam.
And with that makes it more difficult, not only for you to foot yourself, but also it's a bigger sell to your employer. And particularly in these times when things might be getting a little bit more slim, you should think about that because you don't want to come off as asking for too much.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Can I just piggyback on that real quickly, just because that was a real example? I actually asked my employer 11 years ago to pay for my lead certification, and they refused to. They were like, Kelly, that's not what we think you should be going to. I paid for it by myself. I wanted to take control of my career and my career choices. And I was like, you know what? I'm good. I paid for it myself and it's been beneficial. So there's also that. What do you want to do?
Yeah, no, that was a really good point. I mean, that was my follow-up question. That, I mean, when the employers is not paying, we should have our own plan. But that's a good example that, I mean, definitely help you. If you then get the certification, then paying for it and waiting for someone to pay for that, you probably couldn't get the benefit that you get. Yeah.
I paid for my first credential as well.
Yeah, same here.
I also paid for mine, and I just wanted to say, not to cheer for John's team here, but the WELL exam and training classes are half off through the end of the year. So there's a sale.
Yeah, good point.
Not John's team, it's our team.
So I have 2 more questions, and I want to just give at least everyone a minute at the end. We are 3 minutes to the end, but I want to go maybe 2 minutes over and give everyone just less than a minute to just have a closing statement. But before doing that, there's a question that I really want to ask Paddy, that like usually people in the design industry and consulting just professionals are pursuing the certification. What is the benefit of this certification for people? And you're working with a wide range of people, general contractor, like developers, owners. What is the benefit of pursuing the certification for people that are not necessarily working in the design industry?
I think that's a great question. When LEAD first came out, there was like testing mania and everybody was running out and taking their LEAD AP. And I know a number of people that got those letters behind their name and they've never used that knowledge. As LEAD changed in 2009 and the LEAD GA was added, as a contractor, I feel real strongly that it's beneficial to anyone within my organization to have the LEAD Green Associate credential. I don't feel that as a contractor, it's super relevant to someone to take the LEAD AP. Do I welcome it, encourage it? Absolutely. I think it's a win for my organization every time I can get somebody to take that exam. But on a relevance, you know, the GA is by far more applicable to a contractor. There's no contractor that needs to know how to calculate the light angle in the room, right? That's a design issue. For the well, that was a really interesting one. As John said, well is highly operational. And so for me, I did it for our own office because we were pursuing wells, and I was the client and the builder, and so it was and the administrator. So that was a great thing. But when we went and did it for another client's office, having that credential was incredibly helpful because well's a new rating system, and a lot of people don't have institutional knowledge about it yet. And I feel that it's going to be the same thing when I'm on a LBC project. That knowledge I've gained through my LFA is going to be useful. Even though we're the builder, that's also where a lot of the gaps are happening in these high performing projects. And then just to speak to the FIAS, we have people enrolled right now in our organization in the FIAS certified builder training class, because we understand that there have also been gaps on FIAS projects because of contractor knowledge gap, and we don't want that to be us. So I think there's a lot of benefit to having the contractors have some of these credentials.
Great. No, that was awesome. I mean, we are at the time, but I want to just give, if everyone has a final thought, or just, I'm sure when we're discussing, things come to mind. So before we switch to the second half of our events, which is going to the breakout rooms and continue the conversation that we are having, if you have any other final thoughts or any other final statement, please feel free to mention.
Dead space. I hate that. Okay, I'm just gonna go real quickly. I just basically say everyone is in the end responsible for their own career choices and their own career pathways. Sometimes you will make errors in judgment or mistakes. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just part of the whole journey of your experience or time or knowledge in a particular industry. Don't take a certification because you think it's cool or it's a cool thing to do. Find out internally what your strengths are. Are you a people person? You want to be in project management? Figure out what helps you develop those skills that you're already pretty good at. And also maybe what might help you learn some other areas that you're not familiar with. And that should be the reason why you take a certification. And not always necessarily what your firm is doing, even though that helps, you know, to be relevant in the market. But your career is going to take you through this journey, and you're not sure where you might be in 5 years' time. It's just something that would always be beneficial to you, and you can always pull back on and as you move through your journey. I think that's my spiel.
Yeah, I would tag on to that. Sorry, Kelly, in that, you know, even if you don't pursue a given credential, you know, like Patty said, it is a continuum of learning, and each of us can provide resources during the breakout on how you can get more involved with these respective organizations, whether it be monthly meetings or committees and so forth. But if you are interested in one of them, feel it out a little bit. You know, there's no pressure to register for an exam. Dive in, start studying, try to understand it on your own, and see where that takes you. But any way you cut it, regardless of the certification, you will be improving yourself and ultimately your project work.
Okay, I'll add on to that. I think any credential is an investment in yourself. If you're doing it just because you think it's going to be some rung in a ladder in your career, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And often I don't even think that will actually work. I think all of these credentials we're talking about today are some of the many that are green, sustainability focused credentials. So I assume if you're here, it's because you care about the bigger mission, the bigger problem, that all of us need to be a part of the solution. So really, I'm not going to endorse any one of these as being better than the other. I think they all offer different benefits, and really together they all work really, really well. So if you're asking, how do I advance my career? You're asking the wrong question. It's, what is my passion? How will I better contribute to why we're all here to solve a bigger problem?
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I think that's that was a really good closing statement, saying that, I mean, it's we are all here for a bigger goal, and it's I mean, definitely we are just caring about our own career, but like all of these sustainability credentials, they're all serving a bigger purpose, which is climate change, and we want to fight that. And it's not, it's a group work that we are all in together. Great.
I'm still gonna temper that with the pragmatic approach of understanding what your clients need and what your firm needs.
Yes, yes, the business case.
You want to be able to apply it, to Kelly's point.
Yes.
The other Kelly's point.
Okay, John.
Okay. With that, thank you all for. I mean, I want to thank all the panelists for accepting to be part of this panel, and just spending the time and having the time this late to be with us. And I have to mention that this is definitely the favorite group of my sustainability professionals I know in Chicago, and it was a really good experience to be the moderator of your panel. So thank you, and thank you everyone for just like, we didn't lose a single person from the audience. I think that's a big achievement. So let's move to the breakout rooms and continue the conversation over there.
Thank you.